I think the real question for Poshmark is, are they the number one winner? Their business the core actually doesn't seem as strong in the United States as it should be. Why didn't they switch gears and go direct listing? Poshmark basically left 100% of their value on the table. We have Poshmark, which is now a public company. They had actually originally filed to go public back in the fall, I believe in September of 2020. And then it kind of fell off the radar. We didn't really know what was going on with them. And they kind of resurfaced. They filed their S1 in mid-December of 2020. And then, just in the past few days here, hit the exchanges. Here's the first take on it from Yahoo Finance, that their IPO, their stock price is soaring 140%. IPO'd at $42 and it opened at $97. So, what this means, this is back to Bill Gurley. This is why you do direct listings. Kind of curious why Poshmark, because when you actually look at when the first announcement was back in September of 2020, to then them filing the S1 in mid-December, to then now going actually public in mid-January of 21. Why didn't they switch gears and go direct listing? We've seen this with Roblox, who scuttled their IPO, which was supposed to happen in December. And frankly, I think they did that correctly. They actually did another fundraise before actually going public. And now I guess they're looking at doing a direct listing, even though you can now do a direct listing and raise capital. Anyway, long story short, looks like Roblox is going to do a direct listing rather than IPO, which I think makes sense for exactly this reason, right? What this means is that Poshmark basically left 100% of their value on the table. They could have literally just doubled the price. They could have raised double the money. And who benefits from that are the bankers and the investors that got in at the $42 share price and then, doubled their money upon this thing actually hitting the public markets. Right now, though, it has gone down from the opening price to about $75 a share. So is Poshmark a good buy? What is Poshmark? Let's back up a second here. Poshmark is a secondhand marketplace. It's positioned differently than a Farfetch and the Real, which are the two leading luxury goods marketplaces. You also have GOAT and StockX, which are sneaker marketplaces. The average order price on Poshmark is like $30 or something, right? You go to any of those other four I just mentioned, and it's going to be multiples higher than that, what their average order price is. So this is more about, kind of secondhand everyday clothing than it is about that luxury, hard to find, really high priced items. So doesn't mean it's a bad business. It's just, when you look at like secondhand textile clothing marketplaces and you say, oh, well, there's a bunch of these, they actually all have their own niches. And these aren't, $1 billion niches. These are tens of billions of dollars niches, right? So this is a $30 to $50 billion industry, this kind of like secondhand, resale clothing industry. So it's not a small niche by any means, but that's what you see. Name of the show, right? Winner take all. There are one or two dominant marketplaces in each vertical. So you have Farfetch and the Real as like the two dominant kind of luxury goods. And then you have GOAT and StockX, which are more so focused on shoes and are now kind of getting into like watches and some other things like that. They're also watch marketplaces. And then you have these kind of lower end secondhand clothing resale marketplaces. Poshmark being, the one that just went public. There's also another one called ThredUp, which confidentially filed to go public actually in October of 2020. So this is also a similar thing, kind of like in the brewing stage. We don't know exactly when the S1 is going to be filed. We don't know exactly when they're going to IPO, how they're going to IPO. Is this an IPO? Is this a direct listing? Still lots of stuff unknown here, but ThredUp is in the running. There are other European secondhand clothing resale marketplaces called Vinted is one of the leaders, if not the leader in Europe. Another one is called Depop. And so again, you got winner take all dynamics here. You got only one or two winners in each of these different verticals. Each vertical can have one or two winners, okay? But the question is, if you're an investor looking at Poshmark, right, are they going to be the winner, and is there upside here? So, to that story, let's look at, before I really dive into the Poshmark S1, let's just look at Farfetch and the RealReal. So Farfetch has done phenomenally well with COVID. As we have seen, GOAT and StockX similarly do very well. Farfetch we've covered here. Can see this is the kind of stuff you're buying on Farfetch. I don't even know, what is that? That's not leopard. Kind of looks like rocks or like wood chips and in the desert. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Sure, it's expensive. So Q3 sales jump. This is Q3 2020 sales. Jumped 71% for Farfetch. GMV. So sales, that's revenue. GMV is total throughput. Jumped 62%. This article does a better job doing the year-over-year comparison here. Farfetch GMV jumps to almost 800 million. And we've seen similar leaps here with StockX and GOAT last year. We also used StockX and GOAT earlier in the year to predict Farfetch to beat on their earnings. You made some money if you were watching the show. GOAT and StockX were releasing their results, and they're private, and they were releasing their results. And so we took a not so distant gander to say, well, I bet Farfetch is going to outperform too. And they did, and they popped big time. So anyway, Farfetch here. So they're at 800 million. They were at about 500 million in GMV in Q3 year over year, right? 2019. So 500 million to 800 million year over year. That is phenomenal growth. Phenomenal growth. If you annualize Farfetch's GMV, if they can keep that up, which that's a lot of growth, right? Year over year growth. But if they can keep that up and they're at a $2.5 billion GMV run rate, Farfetch today, their stock they're trading at about $20 billion market cap. So you can peg it at roughly a 10x GMV. That's a very healthy GMV multiple, like extremely healthy GMV multiple. Okay. Very healthy. Now let's look at RealReal. RealReal did not do that well as compared to Farfetch. So RealReal is going to be I would call them not a distant, but certainly a laggard number two. They had 17% quarter over quarter growth. That's at about $250 million in GMV. This is Q3 2020. Total revenue was a year-over-year decrease. Yikes, that's not good. So they had quarter over quarter growth, but it's not the kind of numbers we're seeing from Farfetch, which is definitely the clear winner, clear leader in this luxury good marketplace space. And as a result of that, when you look at RealReal market cap here, $2.5 billion. Again, just annualize the 250. That's like a 2.5x GMV multiple, right? So 10x to 2.5x GMV multiple. I'm overgeneralizing here, gang, but you can kind of see the both goalposts here. So let's back up and look at Poshmark. Poshmark right now, ending at a $75 share price, is about $5.5 billion market cap. If they were actually at the $42 share price, we're talking around the threes, not half, but right around $3 billion market cap is essentially roughly where they priced their IPO. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, and let's look at some of the numbers for these guys. So brass tacks, they got 200 million items in Poshmark. Roughly that $30 average order size. They have generated $4 billion in GMV since 2011, $1.3 billion in the past 12 months ending Q3 of 2020. So this is all kind of apples to apples comparison, right? And that was a 30% year over year growth. They had $1 billion. Show you. They had $1 billion in GMV in 2019, right? So for the same period ending in Q3 2020, that's not an annual, right? That's not a quarterly GMV. That's an annualized 1.3 compared to 1 billion. So actually, if you look at the Real, they are bigger in GMV than the Real. Poshmark is, okay? And by market cap, even at the $42 share price, which Poshmark was originally contemplating their IPO, Poshmark would have also been bigger, slightly bigger by market cap than the Real. So that's kind of in line if you think about it in that sense. I think the real question for Poshmark is, are they the number one winner, right? Are they going to have that winner take all dynamic? Should they be closer to the 10x GMV multiple, which that's very high, okay? But should they be at that end of the spectrum, or should they be closer to the 2.5x GMV multiple, which is where Real is? So if you just take $1.3 billion times 2.5, that's roughly where they were actually pricing their IPO, low to mid threes in market cap, right? Should they be 5x GMV? Should they be 4x GMV, which is actually right around where they are right now, is a 4x GMV at $75 a share? Let's look a little bit more at some of the other stats here, and we can kind of figure out where Poshmark is in the market. They had 31 million active users. That just means, I guess, people browsing, because that number falls off quite significantly. A fifth of those people are actually active buyers, and then 4.5 million active sellers. Okay. The leader in Europe is a company called Vinted, and Vinted had an interview. This was in 2019. Here is Thomas, the CEO. This was October 2019, right? So Q3 2019, or we're Q4, but looking at the year ending in Q3. And he lists some stats here. He says we got 120 million items on Vinted. They've got a $17 average order price, so it's about half of that $30-ish one for Poshmark. And look at this. They've got 23 million European users versus Poshmark's 30. Again, these are a year old, right? This is October 2019. So these stats are a year old. So 23 million users. He says in France is their biggest market. In Europe, we expect an annual GMV of 1.3 billion euros. Okay, so that's what, 1.5 billion US? That means in 2019, last year, Q4 ending Q3 2019, so the same period that Poshmark was doing $1 billion in GMV, these guys were doing 1.5, right? And since then, Poshmark grew 30% to 1.3 billion. They still did not eclipse. Poshmark today is still smaller than where Vinted was a year ago, okay? More than a year ago now. But then he actually gives even more color here. And now this is in France. France has now become the leading market for Vinted with 10 million registered members and a GMV growth of 230% year over year. That doesn't mean they are growing their 1.5 billion 230%. But if this is the largest pocket, largest portion, largest market for Vinted, and that's growing at 230%, that's a very strong indicator to say with some degree of confidence that Vinted should be growing much faster than a 30% year over year growth rate on their GMV, right? Which is what Poshmark did in that same period of time. So if Vinted could keep up, if that was from 2018 to 2019, 230% GMV growth in their biggest market, France, if that is somewhat even resembling what the rest of the market is like for Vinted, we're talking about two businesses on very different trajectories here. Now, Poshmark is raising money so that they can expand into Europe, and Vinted is a European business. So this isn't saying that these things are directly competitive. They're not. I mean, there's some overlap, I'd say, geographically, but they really aren't going head to head yet. I think what's interesting, though, is that as you've seen with Farfetch, where Farfetch was really a European company, they've expanded into the US. They just did a JV with Richemont to go into China. Eventually, you're going to see these platforms and these marketplaces cross territories, right? Poshmark go to Europe, and could we see Vinted come to the US? I don't know. They haven't announced plans to file to go public, but clearly they have a very strong business in Europe. Now, is Poshmark going to try and use this money to acquire Vinted or to acquire Depop, who I think is the number 2 player? I don't know, but we do want to compare and contrast these things to think about going back to Poshmark. What's the right valuation for them? So Vinted growing faster, but in Europe. ThreadUp, we don't have as much visibility on, but I think it is safe to say that Poshmark is the largest in the United States. Should they be at a 4 or 5x GMV multiple versus an 8? I think going much higher is overpriced. If we look at $100 a share, which is actually where their IPO ballooned to at open. This kind of middle range feels a lot more comfortable to me. I think that they are the leader, at least of the public ones, and certainly in their market. Not to say that going into Europe, if they want to use this money that they've raised to go into Europe, that's expensive and not easy to do. And clearly, I don't know, their business the core actually doesn't seem as strong in the United States as it should be. It might actually be premature for them to actually try and launch internationally or go and do M&A internationally. You need that engine humming here. And typically when you have these kind of downturns cyclically, these secondhand marketplaces tend to do well, right? Because now you're going to get more supply. People are going to want to put more inventory onto the marketplace because they need some funds, right? They clear stuff out of their closet and get some funds for that. So I would be hesitant to really go much above where Poshmark is today. I think it's a fine business. It isn't standing out to me to be really kind of Farfetch level or Vinted level of growth and dominance. And Farfetch obviously is in multiple different countries here, and they just seem to be on fire. So the aggressive growth story here to justify a much higher either revenue and GMV multiple, however you want to look at the valuation, don't really see it there for Poshmark right now. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.